All right, our next sample is the zigzag seam allowance. This was pretty fun. It'll teach you how to use different settings on the machine. So again, read the materials needed and start at the beginning. It says lay two 3x6 rectangles together with right sides or pretty sides touching, and then sew a straight 5/8 inch seam down the long edge, back stitching at the beginning and the end. So before you even zigzag, you do have to sew a straight line. So we're going to get our samples and we're going to put them pretty sides together. Line everything up, and this is going to be just like the first one. I'm going to place my fabric on the 5/8 inch line, lower the presser foot, twist the hand wheel so the needle goes in, pull the thread to the back, and do a straight 5/8 inch seam, back stitching at the beginning and the end. And the back stitch, go all the way down that edge. Back stitch when you get to the end, lift up the presser foot and trim your threads. Make sure you trim your threads as you go so that they don't get caught up in the machine. It'll help save you a lot of time later as well. All right, so reading our instructions, it says push the right stitch width selector button to a zigzag stitch number 5. When you look at your instructions, it'll show you what part is circled that will show you. A lot of people get confused and they'll mess with these buttons down here. Do not touch those buttons. Your stitch width selector is this top pair of buttons right here. It actually has a zigzag symbol running right down the middle. I'm going to push the right button and I'm going to push it over until the display screen shows that it is over at a number 5. The display screen is right here, and you'll see that the bar across the top, the horizontal bar, will move over to 5. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our instructions. It says line up the straight 5/8 inch seam with the left edge of your presser foot and use it as a guide. Sew the zigzag stitch all the way down the long edge, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Your zigzag stitch should be on the right side of the straight stitch, not on top of it. So we're going to do this one together. It says to take the left edge of my presser foot and line it up with the seam that I just sewed on the machine. So instead of following the stitch plate this time, I'm going to use the left edge of my foot and follow the stitch line this time. So I'm going to lower the presser foot, and just like any other stitch, we have to back stitch. Just because it's a zigzag doesn't mean you don't back stitch. So I'm going to go forward, I'm going to back stitch to the edge, and you'll see it's really cool. It does it automatically. So remember, you are watching the left edge of your presser foot on this stitch line on your fabric, not the stitch plate. So we're going to zigzag all the way down. Remember to back stitch when you get to the end. Lift the presser foot and trim your threads. And you can see now we have a zigzag stitch to the right of our straight stitch. The zigzag does not go over the straight stitch, it's to the right. So we're going to trim our threads just like always. And a lot of people think that we're done, but we still have a couple more steps in our book to read. So as we read on, step 6, push the left stitch selector back to a straight stitch or a 0. That way we won't mess up again on a different sample and have to unpick. So we're going to move this all the way back down to 0. Step 7 says, carefully trim away any excess seam allowance, being careful not to cut through the zigzag stitch. And if you look at the pictures, it'll guide you through what part we're cutting. So I'm going to take my sample and I'm going to cut all of this extra off right here, but I'm going to try not to cut through my stitching. So I'm going to take my shears and very carefully trim all the way down that seam allowance next to the zigzag, but not through the stitches at all. Go as slow and steady as you need to. Try not to cut through the stitching. So there we have our zigzag. We can see that it's really close, trimmed really close to the zigzag. We've got one more step to do. It says trim all threads, which we did, open and press the seam to one side, and then staple on the next page. So we're going to open it up And just like the last one, we're going to press it to one side. It doesn't matter if it's to the right or to the left, you just need to press it. So I'll show you how to do that on the iron. All right, here's our zigzag seam allowance. The instructions say to press this one to the side. So we're going to open our fabric, take our iron, and press the zigzag seam allowance to the side. It doesn't matter if it's to the left or to the right. You can use the steam. And as you can see, here's our seam allowance. Press to the side. Staple it with the zigzag side facing up or the wrong side facing up so I can check your seam. And this one's done. You ready to staple your zigzag seam allowance in? Make sure the wrong sides are up. The seam has been pressed to the side, and you staple to only one page, not through your booklet.